herb garden, chickens, vegetable garden, canning, essential oils, sourdough bread, goats, homemade soap, milk cows. Could I sell eggs to help pay for all of this? Ever felt that familiar feeling of overwhelm when you're thinking about starting a homestead? Keep watching for my step-by-step formula for turning that feeling of overwhelm into action. If you're in the beginning stages of building a homestead or planning a homestead and you can't shake that paralyzing feeling of being overwhelmed, this video will give you my step-by-step formula for turning your overwhelm into action. This is my no-fluff approach and the exact same method I use in my own life to get all of my big projects done. So I could give you a typical generic list of things to do to fight overwhelm. Take a deep breath, make a list, prioritize, but I'm guessing you already know those things and you're still feeling overwhelmed. So instead of listing off a bunch of fluffy things you already know, I'm going to walk you through step by step on how I deal with overwhelm. So it's no secret that we have done a lot of big projects over the years, whether it was our house remodel or building a shop or pretty much redoing every inch of our homestead property. And while we aren't in the start a homestead stage anymore, we do have big projects happening elsewhere in our lives. So our latest project that really had me feeling paralyzed for a while is actually a blog project. And I'll get to tell you more about it in the upcoming weeks. But when I first started to conceptualize this process, I remember just feeling this overwhelming sense of fear and overwhelm. And so much so to the point that there were several months where I would think about it, but I just almost felt like I couldn't take action because I didn't know where to start. Have you ever felt like that with homesteading? I know I have. However, once I used this method I'm about to show you, everything started to flow, I began to get action rolling, and my stress turned into excitement. So the first step of this process is getting all the jumbled ideas, goals, and worries out of our head and onto paper, because when they're floating around in your brain, I promise they seem 1,000 times more daunting and overwhelming than they really are. So you can do this exercise in a planner, on a giant whiteboard, or just on a piece of scratch paper. It's totally up to you. So the first step of this process is to just write everything that you have swirling in your head down on the paper. Get it out of your brain. So since we're working on this in a homestead aspect, we're gonna pretend like we're starting a homestead. I have all these plans and I just need to brain dump them on a piece of paper. And I figure if I do this, I'll be like all the cool Instagram homesteaders, right? That's the goal. Just kidding. Okay, so this is theoretically, if I'm in a build a homestead scenario, this might be some of the things that I have floating around in my head that I'm seeing in books and on YouTube channels that I want to do. I want to do all of them. I want to do all of them now, and I don't know which one to start first. So now that I have my brain dump list, I'm going to go through and assign dates or time periods for each of these items. Now, some of these might not happen for a couple years, some of them might happen next week, but it's really important for me to sort out which is which. So for the sake of this exercise, we're going to pretend that chickens are something I want to have happen within the next 2 months. So I'm going to say we're going to have these happen in March. The garden, we're going to pretend like it's January at the time of this video. So we're going to say the garden's going to go in April. Now goats, I might not have room for goats right now. So let's say that there's something that I'm going to have go into place next year. Bread, I'm going to wait on that till the winter time just to be saving my sanity. So we'll say winter. Bees, that's at least 2 years down the road. Just thinking about everything else I have. Cheese, that could also be winter. Canning, we'll say next year just because I'm going to be really busy with everything else. And the vegetables can be a goal that goes in starting in April. So now that I have my timeline laid out, I'm just going to mark the ones I need to start working on immediately. And for the case of this example, that would be chickens, the garden, and this one, which is part of the garden, okay? Now, I have my 3 things chosen. Yours might be more or less, but I need to make an agreement with myself and be at peace that these things I'm going to mentally and physically put on the back burner. These ones in the middle here that are not underlined in purple, and I'm gonna be okay with that. All right, now it's time for a new paper. I'm gonna make a new column for the items I chose. So that was chickens and a garden. And now it's time to break it down, and I need to get very, very specific on what needs to happen for each of these items to actually occur. So for chickens, it might be make roosts, make or find nesting boxes, where to find chicken feed. Maybe I need to source a supplier or find a recipe. I need to figure out heat lamps and electricity. Maybe my chicken coop isn't wired yet. Okay, and for the garden, let's see, some things that would need to happen is to borrow a tiller to dig up the spot. I need to find fertilizer. I need to make a map of the rows so I know like how much food I could feasibly fit in there, because I do have the goal of growing a whole bunch of vegetables this year. And then order seeds. Okay. Okay, so obviously this is just an example, and you might break it down in a different way or break it down according to your situation. Maybe you need to build a chicken coop. Maybe you already have a coop or a shed, you just need to upgrade. Maybe you want a chicken tractor. You know, it just depends on whatever your first steps are. But the more granular you can get with your steps and your processes, the more tension will lift from your brain. So once I have my breakdown of each item, I need to prioritize each step and then also figure out who is responsible for each step. So if you have a spouse, maybe they'll be more prone to doing some of these items, or if you have a child or someone who can help you, maybe it's just you and that's perfectly okay. But I know, like for us, I would assign Christian to figure out the electricity. He loves it when I make him a list. I know Christian would also be the one to work on the tiller. And I would definitely be the seeds. I probably would do the rest of these, so I'm just gonna leave my name on that. And then I just prioritize which comes first, so I know literally what I can start working on like tomorrow. So mapping out rows in the garden would be first. I'd say order the seeds would be second, depending on what I figure out with my rows. Finding the fertilizer or manure would be third, and then Christian could figure out the tiller closer to springtime. For chickens, I'd say figuring out the electricity situation would be first and foremost to make sure that we could even have chickens in our situation if we were in a brand new shed or chicken coop, depending on our climate. And then I'd say nesting boxes would be second, roosts would be third, and then right before I get the birds or the chicks from the feed store, we'd work on making sure we have a good source of chicken feed. And then the last step, of course, is to just do it. And like I mentioned on my video about setting homestead goals, which I'll link in the show notes below, starting anything of value is almost always like leaping off a cliff. And it's okay to have that feeling. You just got to learn how to work through that feeling. You got to do it scared, and you got to do it with the butterflies. However, breaking it into these simple steps will make it easier, because you'll get a little dopamine hit from your brain every time you accomplish one of the mini steps, and that makes you more motivated to tackle the next one. So do your homework, break it down, but then know at some point you just gotta dive in, overwhelm or no overwhelm, just start making it happen, and everything gets a little bit clearer after that point. Now, one other little note. When it comes to the feeling of being overwhelmed with a homestead, in my opinion, one of the biggest contributing factors to that is often comparison. I've noticed that personally, when I start to feel like I'm not making progress fast enough, or I don't know where to start, or there's too many things swirling in my head, It's often because I've been looking at what other people are doing or looking at other people's homesteads in a way that is unhealthy and causing me to compare myself to others. Comparison really is the thief of joy. And if you find yourself struggling with this, I recommend that you take a little break from social media or wherever you're getting those feelings of comparison creeping in so you can focus on your projects and what you have in the works. So now you know how to turn your overwhelm into action, but what about all the nuts and bolts and processes of actually getting the chicken coop built or the garden put in or those seeds started? So I've created a special library of homestead resources just for my loyal readers and subscribers, and I'm making it available for free to you today. Just go to the prairiehomestead.com/grow or click the link below, and you can get instant access to all of my best PDF, action plans, and more. And if you like this video, I'd love for you to show it by giving me a thumbs up, and then drop a comment below and tell me if you've ever dealt with homestead overwhelm and what you did to overcome it. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week with another video.